First story. Both parties messed up. Was it an EA? Can R be achieved? Framing this as a story to try to keep things objective while asking for advice for the couple and reconciliation. Think in advance. George, 34 AM, and Georgina, 34F, dated for 9 years before deciding to get married. They had previously lived in Texas, D.C., and then Seattle. They seem very happy with their lives and with each other. After getting married, Georgina gets her dream job in her home country, so they decide to move abroad to Italy. They have been married for 2 years and have no children yet. George is pursuing a doctorate and hasn't been working because of health issues and later legal issues with residency in their new home country. As a result, Georgina covers the majority of their bills so that George can finish his graduate research. George spends most of his day working from a coffee shop or at home. His days are long and he has been dealing with anxiety and depression for a while. He is frustrated with how much time he has been putting towards his research and not making progress. He is also stressed because he sees how his partner basically has to cover everything financially. It also doesn't help that he feels that Georgina is tired all the time and doesn't want to hang out with him despite him putting in the effort to prepare dinners for her, suggesting date ideas, and setting aside time to watch their favorite shows together. Georgina starts to share with her co-workers' friends that she is becoming resentful of George since he is still working on his research and not working in a full-time job yet. Her co-workers are fun, social, and contribute to a positive working environment. She quickly becomes close friends with them, eating lunch together, going out for beers after work, etc. She tries to invite George, but it's a bit inconvenient for him to meet up with them since they work in different towns. She starts to sense that one of her co-workers likes her, but she isn't sure. They start to talk more at the office and love DMing each other memes, funny pictures from the office, and life updates. Before she knows it, she starts to develop feelings for her coworker, Gene, because he's easy to talk to, fun, and not as stressed out all the time like George is. She talks about Gene with her other coworkers to try to figure out if Gene really does like her. She doesn't share any of this with George, saying she is messaging with her coworker group whenever he asks who she is messaging at night. Eventually, George suspects that Georgina might have something going on with one of her new co-workers' friends. He asks her, and she repeatedly denies that anything is going on until the end of the day when she reveals that she has started to develop feelings for Gene. However, she insists that nothing happened. She and Gene are just friends, and she was planning on limiting her interactions with Gene in the coming weeks anyways. George finds this hard to believe given how close they have become. He asks her to please break off her friendship with Gene as he feels their frequent communication, sharing of personal relationship struggles, and inside jokes could be contributing to an emotional affair between the two of them. Georgina says there is no affair and she wouldn't cheat on George. However, she refuses to accept the idea of an emotional affair. Sticking to the definition of a physical affair is what would be considered cheating. Georgina decides to permanently delete her conversation with Gene as she is worried that George may take their conversations out of context, further spurring his feelings of betrayal. And to appease George, she goes out with Gene over tea to explain to him that she can no longer hang out with him as much anymore, despite wanting to, because it has upset her husband and he is already stressed. George is hurt and feels betrayed. George thought that he and Georgina could address his relationship with Gene together, but Georgina thought she should handle it on her own terms since it was her friendship, and didn't want to admit her feelings for Gene. So George feels unsure if an emotional affair actually happened, because when he asked to see her conversation with Gene, Georgina refused to share, or if he is being too sensitive to Georgina's friendships with her co-workers and with Gene in particular. George tells Georgina that he is heartbroken and he feels lost as to whether or not they can move forward together in their relationship. Georgina is tired of being the breadwinner in their marriage. She feels like she is doing everything to keep them afloat, She sees George as overreacting over nothing rather than choosing to focus on his graduate degree because in her mind, she didn't do anything physical like kissing or sex, so she couldn't have cheated on George. And it wasn't like she was only going out for beers with Jean. The whole co-workers friends group would go together. She tells George that she loves him, but has been unhappy in their marriage for a while. She feels she hasn't been doing what she wants, but rather just doing what is the natural next step. She reveals she has felt this way since they were living in DC, and she has come to the realization that while she loves George, she is no longer attracted to him and doesn't feel in love with him anymore. She feels he has let himself go after he gained 5 kilograms and she lost 5 kilograms from marathon training. As a result, she doesn't know what she wants in their relationship. In the coming days, George and Georgina have a deep discussion over the issues they have in their marriage, and whether Georgina did anything wrong as well as why George is not finished with his studies yet so that they can start to have a better and comfier life together. They mostly just share their feelings with each other and discuss what they feel are problems in their marriage. George asks Georgina what she needs to figure out if she wants to continue to be with George, and Georgina asks for space to figure things out. George asks for time to heal a little. They decide to take a break and reflect on their marriage and what they each want and need. Individual counseling, marriage counseling, etc. Georgina keeps thinking that things will get better once George finishes school and has a job. Do you think, given where they are now, that will be the case? Did Georgina have an EA? Or is George overthinking their relationship? Can George and Georgina achieve R and move forward in their marriage? Or should they divorce? Any advice? George and Georgina are both upset towards each other. George is upset because he thinks that Georgina had an EA with a coworker and Georgina thinks George isn't working hard enough to finish school and get a job. Is R possible? Update. 1 month post D-Day update on George and Georgina. George is unsure if R is the right step for him, because of how Georgina handled the situation with Jean, and because of what Georgina shared with him during their discussion. He feels like if Georgina has just been going through the motions for more than half of their relationship, and because of the recent lies combined with the lack of attraction, it is possible that she didn't even want to get married with George to begin with and was doing it because it was what was expected of her. So he just feels like he's waiting for his wife to decide if she truly wants to be married to him or not. He can't help but feel anger. Georgina later admits to George that she looks forward to going to the office largely because she will get to see Jean, but says she doesn't look forward to coming home to George. George is trying to give her the space she asked for, but a mutual friend tells him that Georgina started messaging with Jean again, and has confessed to continuing to delete their messages, because she doesn't want to give George anything to worry about when the break is over in case he asks to see her. Phone. Because of their discussion before the break, she tries to limit her social time with Jean to only group settings to minimize the risk of acting on her feelings. She wonders if she should tell George when she goes out with the group and Jean is present, but decides that it might just stress George out more. She loves George so much, but now that they are on break, for the first time in a while, she feels at peace and not resentful. Second story. My 30M wife, 29F, told me she is done today in marriage counseling. Do I just let go? My wife and I met at random one night while I was out with some friends at a local dive bar. We instantly hit it off. Both of us could not spend more than a few days apart and we could not keep our hand off each other. We were both relatively young when we met. I was 22 and she had just turned 21. I hadn't had a serious relationship up to this point and she had been in some, but never engaged or married. Everything felt so natural and easy. So easy in fact that I told her I loved her within a month of us meeting. She was the first woman I had ever felt this way about. Luckily this didn't scare her and she told me she loved me too. Within a few months we had moved into a small apartment together and everything was amazing. We were madly in love with one another and I could see myself spending the rest of my life with her. I am pretty traditional in the thought of marriage is something you do once, and this was something we discussed early in the relationship to avoid any rush or timelines. Although I knew I would marry her, I wanted to be absolutely sure and spend the next few years getting to know that I could spend forever with her, and give her the chance to feel the same way. We got married after nearly 5 years of dating and life had been great. I bought a modest house that we live in, pay all the bills, and provide a pretty luxurious middle-class American lifestyle. We do not have joint finances. Everything comes out of my accounts, and she can spend her $50,000 a year salary on whatever she pleases. We both drive newer vehicles, take trips out of the country, and pretty much have the liberty to buy or do whatever we like. Also, I help her pay for expensive things that she can't outright afford, so she only has a monthly car payment of about $450. In short, there is no financial strain on our marriage or lives. Dual income, no kids. The issues started about a year ago. Everything was going fine in my eyes, but I was noticing a decline in intimacy. 2-3 times a week for nearly 7 years down to maybe once a week. I attempted to try and communicate my concern with her after a very nice night out. She quickly brushed it off as nothing and we went about our evening. Fast forward a week or two and she sits me down to tell me she isn't happy. She feels like she doesn't have close friends, doesn't go out enough, and that she feels stuck sitting at home with me. Although she assured me that this wasn't 100% my fault she was feeling this way, she did clue me in on some shortcomings she felt like I could work on. This was hard to hear as I have never been controlling as to what she does or who she does it with. She goes out with friends to concerts, drinking, dinners, etc. regularly. I told her that I would make a serious effort to address her concerns, and even reached out to some of her friends to take her out for a night on my dime. She seemed to be back to her usual self after a month or so, but the intimacy continued to decline. I brought it up again, and this time it turned into the first real argument we have ever had. She surprisingly had a laundry list of things I was doing that made her not want to do anything sexual with me. I was again pretty hurt, but made a conscious effort to address her concerns. I started drinking less, taking her out more, and hitting the home gym I had that was collecting dust. I dropped the pressure of intimacy conversations and let her decide when and what we did. This is where I messed up, and I have been dealing with the consequences since then. The intimate side of our marriage has never recovered. There has been zero infidelity on my part, but I turned to close family members for advice on what I should do to try and fix this, sparing personal details. With their advice in hand, I wrote her a long letter stating how I felt and how some of her actions were making me feel. I revised the letter several times to ensure it was not accusatory, but a way for me to get my feelings out in a constructive way without arguing. I had made up my mind that her reaction would be my path forward in handling this rough patch. Following her reading this letter, she was defensive and blamed me for her actions, or the lack thereof. I asked her to move out for a few weeks and figure out what she wanted from this marriage, as I was at my breaking point. If she wanted a divorce, done. If she wanted to work on things, I was 100% on board. The ball was in her court. She moved in with her stepdad for about 3 weeks. During this time we kept semi-regular communication but only saw each other in person once. She called me and asked to get lunch to talk about what she had decided. We met up for lunch, and the first thing she said was that the time away had made her realize she can be independent, but she wanted to work on things. This kind of shocked me because the delivery felt like she was fine without me, but wanted the convenience of me being in her life. She moved back in with me and things have been rocky since. Constant fighting, terrible communication, and zero attempt from her to address intimacy. I know it sounds like she is a terrible person and I should walk away, but I added fuel to the fire by turning to drinking and playing video games to subdue my emotions. The drinking got to the point that I was being a mean drunk several times a week and telling her that she makes me miserable. I didn't care if I spent any time with her, and aside from cooking and cleaning together, we are essentially roommates that share a bed most nights. We started counseling a few months ago, and every session I have left feeling like a failure. I hear about how horrible of a husband I am and how the things I do or don't do make her feel like I don't care about her. We haven't had sex in 6 months, continue to fight constantly, and I feel like regardless of what I do there will be a different reason why she is upset. This is where the problem lies. Through all the issues, I am still madly in love with this woman. I cannot see a life without her, and I daydream about being able to go back to the way things were. Loving her had been so easy, and I want nothing more than for us to figure out our issues and move past this. I have refused to give up and have continued making a conscious effort to show her that I care and deeply love her. It all came crashing down today when she informed me that she felt like I would never change and she felt done with our marriage. This broke me. I sat in silence for the last half hour of the session, trying to imagine a life without her, and I can't. I am confused and heartbroken as to why she can't seem to see my efforts, and the lack of her effort to provide the same love and affection she is asking of me. I can say with 100% confidence that I do not want to call it quits, and I feel like one day we can move past this and be back to our old selves. Madly in love and enjoying every day we have together. I have stopped asking friends and family for advice because everyone is just saying get a divorce, and that is not what I want. Has anyone else ever been at this point and has legitimate advice on how to continue fighting for someone you love? Are my efforts in vain and her mind has already been made up? I'm sure this will be buried and have little interaction, but I'm hoping someone out there has gone through something similar and can say it will get better. I want nothing more than for us to figure it out, but feel lost after today. Any helpful advice is appreciated. Amazing and fulfilling marriage turned into confusing and fight-ridden cohabitation after I asked about a decline in intimacy. Third story. 7 years later and I still feel guilty for my ex's infidelity. I really don't know where to begin, but I'll try to anyways. I think that for as long as I can remember I've been anxious around the opposite sex. I had my first and likely only girlfriend at the age of 24. We dated for about 1.5 years and it ended in infidelity when I moved to Japan for work. It happened on the night of my arrival, when she had told me she's already been seeing someone for about the past week, and it sent me down a continuous negative spiral. Due to the newly found desperation stemming from that, I ended up ultimately losing my job after being suicidal for a while. At the time my job was the only ray of sunshine I had, so this was like putting salt in the wound for me personally. I couldn't blame my ex for cheating on me, because I knew she could do better after that moment. She was dating a loser who cared too much, not someone she could truly respect. After that I ended up moving to another part of Japan, where I lived for about 3.5 years. During my time, I tried to date others, but due to this newly born anxiety, I was unable to open up to people, let alone really make friends, because I was so afraid of going through the same thing, and ultimately, I couldn't forgive myself for failing and losing the girl I wanted nothing more than to marry. I constantly behaved in a desperate yet avoidant way because was still in love with her, and constantly compared everyone to her. I had a one-night stand years later, but I couldn't even perform even though she was very attractive, which only furthered my sexual shame. Things I used to enjoy became monochrome and I shut off the world basically in general. It's been 7 years to the day actually, and I am still mentally fucked beyond recognition. She is married and has kids so far as I know, but I still love her to this day. Despite all what happened in the end, I still miss her. And it hinders me from being able to interact and be present with women I find attractive in general due to the total lack of self-esteem, let alone people in general. I feel like a pervert for being even attracted to girls nor looking in their direction. After all these years, I still feel like everything is my fault, that I deserve to have this happen to me and all the painful memories I have experienced. People tell me I'm a good-looking guy, and I've self-sabotaged any potential romantic interest I've had over the years because the feelings of unworthiness and ugliness just never subside. I have been so used to being alone that I am pretty sure that I will stay this way for my entire life. I've been regularly going to therapy for the last several years, but I feel like I constantly go back and forth. I have been alone since then, but I can't forget how live and ready to take on the world I was when she was on my side. I would have done anything for her, but I wasn't worth it to her, and that's what hurts the most every day. She is by all means a ghost now, but her memory still haunts me and reminds me of my failure. I don't think I will ever be able to truly fall in love with anyone ever again.